Hi, everybody. I'm Clifford Shannon of the 9/11 Memorial Museum, and I'd like to welcome you this afternoon to our digital programs. Very much looking forward to this one. I have to confess, not that you tuned in for a confession, but I will say I really love doing the interviews, but sometimes the prep for them just sort of piles up a little bit. But this was a very, very easy program to prep for because Will Chesney, who is the man I'm going to be speaking with in a moment, and his book, No Ordinary Dog, which tells the story of his career in the Navy SEALs and his partnership with the dog Cairo, really meets the hope that Will expressed in writing the book. He wrote, "My hope is that this will not be quite like anything you've read before." And he really makes good on that commitment, on that hope. And so, really thrilled to have the opportunity to do this digitally. We had been honored earlier in the year by planning to actually launch the publication of the book with a program live in the museum. As we all know, the museum has been closed since the middle of March, so that wasn't possible. But we're thrilled now to get Will online here on this digital conversation. And I know the book has done very well so far. So congratulations, Will, for that. And welcome. We really, in talking about your relationship with Cairo, what's so interesting to me is that, and it emerges from the book, Cairo is a team member, really like any other. And I'm not sure that when you started training as a working dog handler, that you had that full appreciation until you got into combat situations, until you were deployed and saw what the dog could do in military situations. So tell me about how your sense of what military working dogs could provide, how that changed over the course of time.
Thanks for the introduction. I'm thrilled and honored to be on here. It's good to see you. There's a saying in the book, I guess it kind of sums it up. And one of my first deployments with my squadron, I remember being in the team room and somebody saying, "Raise your hand if a dog has ever saved your life." And 90% of the guys, almost everybody's hand in the team room went up with probably multiple stories to tell about how a dog had pretty much saved their life, saved them from getting injured. I mean, they're such valuable tools. I just did a podcast the other day with another Army counterpart, and he had a really touching story. Got me like a dog had saved his life from a suicide bomber. It's no joke what they can do. It's an honor to be a part of history, the missions, the people that we get to be around, the mission that we got to partake in. It really was. I can't take credit in all the of telling the story. I had good people behind the book, and especially Joe, Joe Laden helping me put the story together, and just did it so well. We only had one shot to do it, and I think we did a great job. Feedback we've been getting so far is really amazing. So proud of it.
Well, it's very well deserved, and we will talk about the inclusion of you and Cairo on the Bin Laden raid and the flight you took to the Abbottabad compound. And I want everybody who's watching to know that Will was a very generous lender to the exhibition and shared his insights, that historic mission. But of course, the thing that struck me in speaking with a number of the operators who were on that mission was, as important as it was just one mission among many. And you guys went home because you were out of your normal deployment rotation for Operation Neptune Spear. But really, some of the support SEAL teams that had gone as backups in case needed, they were deployed the next night. And so I think one of the things that's so interesting about what the demands were on you and your colleagues as Navy SEALs was the intensity of the deployments, that, it was one mission after another after another.
It was very intense, but every person on the team wanted to be there. We were like one big family. It's one big brother who always wanted to go overseas and do good things and be there for each other as well. We wanted to be there doing that job. All of us went through buds. It's a 6-7 month selection process. If anybody doesn't know what it is, basic underwater demolition SEAL training. It's the training you have to go through in order to become a SEAL. It's a very gruesome process. You have to prove that you want to be there. Being a SEAL isn't just something you do just to say like, "Hey, I'm a Navy SEAL." It's a very important job. Kind of sum it up. There's a guy named Mike Mansour. He jumped on a hand grenade, saving his fellow teammates. Like that's the kind of level of commitment we're looking for in SEAL teams. In order to get that, they have to go through a selection process, and we all go through that. Yeah, to make you want to be there, but in doing so, you're around such a great group of guys who all want to be there doing the job. We all want to be there for each other. We build that family doing such a great, important job. But we were busy. We were so, I guess I was very fortunate to be busy during a time where I wanted to be busy. We need to be busy.
So let me ask, because I know from writing, you wanted to be in the Navy and specifically be a Navy SEAL from your early teenage years. And I don't think you come from a long military tradition in your family. This is something that you latched onto as the way you wanted to serve your country. And then, of course, you sign up for the Navy. You're quite young. You're 17, 18 years old. You need your parents' consent. And you want to be in SEAL training right away, which is very unusual. And yet you figured out how to get into the SEAL training right away. So have I described properly just how motivated you were to do this particular thing?
Yeah, you got to find that purpose in life. I thank God still to this day that I did find that purpose. That I didn't really want to go to college. I didn't have anything. I was really passionate about that. I really wanted to serve my country ever since I was a child. My grandfather was in the Navy. He was a CB. My uncle was in the Army. Neither one of them talked about it much, their service. But since a child, I wanted to serve my country. Maybe around middle school, I decided I wanted to be a SEAL. I love the water. I love being in the water. And they said SEAL training was some of the hardest training in the world. I wanted to see if I had what it took. And it was that passion, that purpose that I found, and I loved it. It was very hard. It was very tough. Like I said, you had to want to be there. You had to prove that you wanted to be there, but it was worth it. I made some of the best friends I could ever ask for along the way, and had some of the best experiences of my life during those times. Just find that purpose in life, whatever you're really passionate about, go for it, get everything you have, and if that's God's plan, then it'll work out.
You write about your first round of training, the BUDS training, that you had a gift, and your gift was that not that you were stronger or bigger or faster or a better swimmer than anybody else. Your gift was that you were just not a quitter. You were just not going to quit. And that got you through when guys who were bigger, stronger, whatever, they fell by the wayside. I mean, you do note that the average size of a SEAL is 5'10", 170 pounds or so. And obviously they're very, very fit, but they're not, most of them anyway, in those dimensions, are not supermen. But, you just, I guess, put your head down and decided you're not going to give this up. Is that fair to say?
Pretty fair. I was a bit of what you call a gray man too, so I was pretty quiet. I don't talk much, if you can't tell. But yeah, I found that purpose. I put my head down, and it was great. It wasn't easy though. We definitely had some tough times. But I don't think I ever really thought about quitting. I just I wasn't sure if I was going to get injured or hurt. I always knew that was there, that option. But I just I remember there was times during training when it was really tough. The 5.5 nautical mile ocean swim. It was so during Hell Week, it's 5.5 days of no sleep, and it's really intense. They rub the top of my hair out with the boats on top of your head for 5.5 days, and it's nonstop training. It's where you lose most of your candidates, but the 5.5 nautical mile ocean swim was the second best sleep I had in my life. And I remember me and my swim buddy, we didn't pass the time the first time, and the instructors were like, "You guys are gonna have to do it again the next day." I remember being on the beach the next day with my stuff, waiting for inspection, thinking I was so sore and was just exhausted that I was like, "I'm gonna give it all I have." I I don't know how we're gonna pull this one off, but I was like, it was the one time I was like, "This is good." This is the one time where I was like, if I was going to call it, now would be it, because this is going to be pretty tough evolution to get through. They made it very tough at times. There's times during Hell Week, you get 2 periods of sleep, I think 1 to 2 hours each. And during this, I think it was the second time, they woke us up nice and quiet from just being exhausted. You're pretty wet and cold and sandy the entire time during Hell Week. So you're dry, you got a couple hours of sleep, and they wake you up nice and easy, put you on the berm, and they make you wave goodbye to the sun. You know exactly how cold the water is. You've been there for days. You know what it's like to be wet and cold, and they give you the option of just walking away. And it's just, a lot of guys do, but a lot of guys don't do.
You got through it, and you were deployed, I believe, pretty quickly, initially in Iraq to doing bodyguard duty essentially for Iraqi dignitaries, as I understand. But you also, at some point along the way in those early deployments, and you're not at this point within SEAL Team 6, known as the development group, you are not yet passing the second challenge to become part of the most elite of the elite. But you saw a working dog demonstration at some point, and that really got your attention, it seems. You had grown up a dog lover, you'd had dogs, but you didn't go into the SEALs thinking that you wanted to handle dogs. You saw these demonstrations, you saw them in action. Tell me about the process that led you to decide that you wanted to play this supporting role rather than necessarily the lead role on some of these missions by handling a dog.
Yeah, I had no idea how dogs are implemented into the SEAL teams. I had dogs growing up, little dogs, bigger dogs, but no training like that. When you get to your team, there are collateral duties that you can do. Just like I was drawn to being a SEAL, once you're there and you get established, you kind of take responsibility of whatever you're drawn to while you're there, whether it's skydiving, sniping, breaching. At my time at Team 4, I got to see one of the demonstrations. I think it was a good buddy of mine, Josh Morton. I think he put on the bite suit and he ran down the field and the dog, just how quick he caught him was amazing, and took him to the ground and held him there while the handler could make his way up to his position. And it was just impressive to see. Everybody had a good laugh of our teammate getting tackled. It was a good time. It was just awesome to see the demonstration and the power of the dogs. It didn't really click until one of my first deployments with my squadron, and then I just saw the value of the dogs. Like I said, I needed a job, and taking responsibility of a dog on target. Dogs are like little kids sometimes. You're having to babysit the dog while doing your job as a SEAL. It's a lot of responsibility as well, and don't want to make a mistake while using your dog to get somebody injured. Dog's a valuable tool that needs to be used properly, and so it's a huge responsibility to take that on and take care of the dog. Some guys want to, and also, sometimes when the dog's not being utilized, you're not being used as well. So the way I looked at it, though, I love dogs. I always had growing up, and it was a good responsibility. It's another passion that I was drawn towards. And if I had the chance of saving one of my guys from getting hurt or killed, that was all the training and time and effort would be completely worth it if I had just one opportunity to be useful. So.
You said at the beginning that, in the squad room, a lot of people, 90% of the SEALs in the room raised their hand when they were asked if the dog had saved them at some point on one of their missions. I wonder if you could give us an example of what that would look like. How would a dog make that kind of an effort? What did it involve? And more broadly than that, what were the responsibilities of a dog under these kinds of circumstances? What were they trained to do?
Responsibilities were dual purpose dogs. They were trained to detect explosive and man odor. So any IEDs, any explosives, booby traps, they would alert us ahead of time. Um, an example was a house that was rigged to explode once we were made our way into it. So we made entrance. One of our dogs, Balto, him and his handler did an amazing job of. The handler read the dog and put in the effort of training the dog to identify what that was. And Balto showed the signs. And his handler picked that up and made the call for everybody to back away. And we saw that the house was rigged to explode. And I mean, there's no telling what would have happened if that we weren't warned ahead of time. It's one amazing instance. They're also they're trained to detect anybody hiding. Sometimes these guys would put on SBS, or they'd grab their guns, RPGs, and they would run out and hide in fields. And dogs have an amazing sense of smell. If used properly, trained properly, they can detect where bad guys are hiding. There's been guys that have been walking through a field and had a dog attack somebody right at their feet that popped up, and literally seconds away from engaging them with a rifle or, like I said, a suicide vest as well. The Army counterpart mine I just talked to, that's his story. The dog engaged the guy who he thought was deceased already. When the dog engaged him, the guy who we call clacked himself off. He pushed the suicide vest, and the dog didn't make it, unfortunately, but he did, and he was very grateful. It's beyond words. That's why we treat these dogs with so much respect. When they do pass and they do sacrifice their lives, we treat them just like members of the team. We have a service for them, put their names up on the team room. We have a special place for them at the memorial wall at the command.
Now, I do want to go back. We're going to talk about Cairo in a minute. And your meeting with Cairo, but you made the jump again, much younger than the average SEAL. You became one of the younger members of SEAL Team 6 development group because you were just really drawn, and you managed to get, after a couple of deployments with SEAL Team 4, you managed to get into the training mode to make that next jump. So tell us the difference between the initial training to become a Navy SEAL and then the second round of training that gets you into development group. You've already been through hell, basically, in the BUDS program. What's the difference? What are they looking for at the next level that they haven't managed to determine in that first round of training?
I would say, everybody's already a Navy SEAL. They know nobody there's going to quit. We all that drive and that we'll never quit. So it's more performance based. It's how you react under pressure, under stressful circumstances. It's just there's a lot of training and ways to incorporate that. There's a lot of physical evolutions as well, where they get your heart rate up really high and see how you act in that way. But I say it's more performance based instead of just trying to make you quit. It's a big difference.
So you made that, and at some point you go into the SEALs to become the alpha dog who's going to lead the charge, but then you decide you're going to be the handler of a real alpha dog, and you're in training to become a dog handler, and they bring some new dogs in, and Cairo, who would eventually become your partner and your dog, is in this group of new dogs who've been bred specially for the purpose, brought over. Tell us about your meeting with Cairo, what your first impression was, what you were looking for, and what impression that Cairo made through the training process. Who is Cairo?
Well, on that deployment prior, there was a dog named Falco. He was a new dog. And in the beginning, he had some issues, but his handler and trainers worked out those issues. He became a great dog on that deployment. We unfortunately lost him towards the end of the deployment. Cairo was shot, explains in the book, and it's kind of the same circumstance, but unfortunately, Falco didn't survive Um, I was supposed to get Falco when we returned home from that deployment. Fortunately, that wasn't able to happen. So when we did return home, trainers and people, they went over and acquired dogs from different places, the best of all the kennels, who they thought would be the proper fit for all the training and the situations that we're in. I was a new handler. I was a SEAL. I wasn't a dog handler by any means. It was a new process that I really had to get comfortable with. I'm a pretty quiet guy, and dog training was a good phrase in the dog world, that your emotions run up and down a leash, communications. The dog doesn't speak English. You have to communicate with that dog. Emotions is a big part of that communication, body language, voice inflection. So it was, Navy SEAL, you have to act tough, kind of, around the guys. In order to get through buds, you have to have a good sense of humor, I would say. Everybody all my teammates, everybody was a comedian. Everybody's a comedian. And, you're around a bunch of guys that, they're just going to start making jokes, and you got to get that tone of voice down. When the dog does a good job, and this is a real situation, what you're training these dogs for could be life or death. You got to get that point across, is, no matter what. And if the dog does something good and you say, good boy, the dog's not really picking up on that emotion, on that. You need to like clap, and like my dogs just woke up. Got 2 Malinois sleeping right now. They need to sense that. They need to you need to communicate clearly in whatever manner that is. It's on you to figure that out with your dog. And I had great people to help me kind of get comfortable with that process. And we had master at arms, MAs, the Navy police, and they were dog handlers. We had them kind of as support personnel to assist us to handle dogs. So I was a new SEAL handler, and they were new MA handlers that were new, and we all went to the program together. And they would teach us, by us I mean SEALs, kind of their handling techniques, and we would teach them SEAL skills. And we're a great group of guys that went through their own selection process as well. And we all went through a great school in California, and spent 8-9 weeks together, getting comfortable together, learning the dogs. I mean, you alone with your dog in the hotel room at night, and all that quality training during the day just really built that bond. And basically, Reed, Cairo, by the end of that training, was just really good people, really great training. By the end of it, I could just kind of tell when Cairo was acting different. I could read him like a book. He gives so much that even in green and black on night vision at night, I know who everybody is by the back of their head and the way they walk. Kind of when they fall, it's kind of funny. You just tell who's who. We were around each other so much. I did that same thing with the dog.
So tell me about Cairo's qualities, Cairo's personality. Cairo really stood out as a dog who was all about work when there was work to be done, took to the training very, very well, and then off duty, and I guess when the vest comes off, Cairo understood that this was not work time, this was playtime, and Cairo was, I don't want to say a pet, but Cairo was a family dog for you in certain ways. So tell us a little bit about Cairo and Cairo's personality, and how Cairo adapted to the challenge of training, and then, of course, the challenge of going on deployments.
Yeah, so what the difference between Cairo and a lot of the working dogs were. I mean, Cairo was the only thing that people know about. Cairo was the one big mission. There was so much more to him than that. He was shot even beforehand, and we went on hundreds of missions together. And afterwards, there's a story, and it goes through my story as well. But he did have that switch that a lot of these working dogs don't have. Some do. What we ask of these dogs is a lot. They have to do everything that we do. And then we ask them to go into a dark room at night and get into a fight with somebody twice their size and not let go until we're there, and we ask them to sometimes sacrifice their lives for us, skydive and fast rope with us. We ask a lot of these dogs. High drive. Every dog is different, just like every person is different. Cairo had that switch where, when it came to working, put that vest on, turn that switch on, and he did an amazing job. All the dogs that we had there, at the command did an amazing job. I would say they all knew how to do their job very well. But when it came to coming back and taking the vest off, turning that switch off, like you said, Cairo wasn't a family pet. These are working animals. We're always trying to treat them with respect. So we did. When we got back from base, he's not a pet, but he was about as close as you could get with his caliber of dog, I guess. Even when he wasn't working, when he wasn't around the guys, I could have him around women. There was women that worked at command. He would lean up against them, and he was a leaner. He would cover your pants with hair, and he had periodontal disease, so he would pant right in your face and put that hot yuck mouth right in your face, and nobody cared. He was just a real sweet boy. Everybody loved him, and they didn't care. Even the guys that were allergic to him on the team, they would still pet him, and he's a good boy. Some of the dogs, they were just too high drive, and they just couldn't turn it off as much. You always had to be really careful. But Cairo could turn it off a little bit more, and he could be more friendly.
I have a question from Jared, who was a 9/11 survivor, and he currently is an explosive detection canine handler, and his birthday actually is May 1st, which is the day of Operation Neptune Spear Raid. Now, he asks if Cairo was injured in the raid on Abbottabad, and I will answer that question that Cairo was not injured, and we'll talk about the raid shortly. But you mentioned earlier, and this is what I think I wanted to get to for Jared, Cairo suffered severe gunshot injuries on a mission prior to Operation Neptune Spear. And you write about that in the book. You write about how that happened and Cairo's incredible dedication in carrying out his mission and then coming back. So tell us that story, if you would, about the night you went out, as other nights had been, and Cairo was sent off to do his work and came back with a very life-threatening injury.
Yeah, Cairo was shot. He said in a circumstance kind of like Falco was killed. We were going after some bad guys, and they somehow found out we were coming. They ended up fleeing. We chased two guys on a motorcycle, a little bike, moped, whatever you want to call it, into a tree line. And sat down, safe distance away, made our way up to the tree line. Since they were bad, they obviously weren't listening. We were trying to get them to come out. Eventually, the call was made to send in the dog. I put myself in the right position at the time to send Cairo into the wind and best to utilize his nose to help find the guys wherever they were hiding. And send Cairo in, and the vegetation was pretty thick, so I lost him, I would say, fairly quickly. As I'm making my way down the line of guys, trying to get an eye on him again, I hear gunshots. And so I knew he was in trouble, whether he was getting shot at or he was already getting shot, or I didn't know exactly what was happening, but I just knew he was in trouble. So I tried to recall him after, I don't know how long, but a certain amount of time went by where I knew that something was wrong, because Cairo, he listened fairly well. He wasn't listening to my recall at the time. Just knew something was wrong, and there was gunfire going on. So obviously we were in contact. Eventually, as I was making my way down the line, trying to stay as safe as possible, I saw Cairo come down to the left side of the flank, and behind the group of guys. As I was getting closer to him, he just collapsed all of a sudden, and I immediately thought he was dead. So this, fortunately, when the dogs get injured like this, they normally don't survive. It's a pretty large caliber round going through a small animal. They just unfortunately don't make it. So I assessed the situation. I figured my guys didn't need me on the line. Cairo did. I was able to make my way up to him. Had some really great team members. One of the guys on the team knew that he wasn't needed there. Cairo probably did need him. He made his way back to our position, and it was a really terrible situation, but it was really cool just, I guess, to look back on and see the amount of teamwork and all the training that went in beforehand, just to see how we reacted in such a bad situation. just the fact that he knew to come back, Cairo would need him was amazing. Cairo had his own specific medical kit. As I was breaking out Cairo's medical kit and tearing it open and handing it to my teammate, happened to be a medic as well. As I hand him the kit, he's getting it prepared, and I'm taking off Cairo's vest and putting on his muzzle. And as I'm doing that, he's got the packages open and he's stuffing them deep inside of his chest. And it's just, this how it worked kind of flawlessly. I really believe that he helped me save his life that night. And it's just a basic glimpse of what happened that night. I mean, the team leaders in charge made the right call to get Cairo out of there quickly. They knew how bad he was. The helicopter pilots came in quickly and put their lives on the line to pick up a dog. They didn't have to. They don't have to consider him a soldier, but he was. When we got back to base, actual surgeons continued to treat him the same. They worked on him. They got him stable. Continued to save his life until we got him to the veterinary, to a veterinarian on a different base. And I didn't think he would pull through the night, but I just continued to take good care of him, and he made it through the night. And it was crazy to see kind of how bad he was, and I really didn't think he would pull through to how quickly he recovered. It was really cool to see. And not only did it stop there, my buddy, his name is Mike Toussaint. His dog had just been killed in action a few nights before. His name is Remco, and that's a whole different story. They both earned silver stars that night. But he was able to take Cairo and bring him back to Lackland Air Force Base. They rehabbed him to full recovery. I was nervous to see if he would be willing to work again or be able to work again. And, he went from almost dying to us participating in other missions, including the Bin Laden mission. It was an amazing thing. I just want to say thank you to all those people that helped.
So you were separated from Cairo as he's brought back for medical treatment, and you continue as a dog handler on these other missions during that deployment. You get back, and Cairo, as you say, unusually given the severity of the injuries, is able to go back on active duty. And so I think at that point, though, the injuries and his age and the length of his experience leads to Cairo sort of playing a fill-in role rather than a lead dog role, if I could say that. You had this relationship with Cairo at the same time where you were visiting with him, you were checking up on him. This was clearly something that was more than just, a dog handler and a dog. This was something that was deeper than that. And, one of the interesting things as I'm reading the book and, reading not just the stories you tell about Cairo, but the way you treat Cairo in the book, it struck me that, A, you're talking about the relationship between you and Cairo, but there's something about this relationship between a seal and a dog that somehow highlights many of the qualities in the seal world more generally, that you guys depend on one another for all kinds of things. And somehow when it's a description of a relationship between a dog handler and a dog, it clarifies in some ways what that dependence is, not just in relation to the dog, but in relation to your other teammates. And it was a very interesting aspect of the book. You can take from what you describe of your relationship with the dog and apply it to what the relationships are with your other teammates. And I really hadn't thought of it that way until I read this book. So get us back to Cairo, and your reunion with him. And then you want Cairo integrated into your personal life, your home life as well.
Yeah, it's like a bond is like I was a dad, and everybody else were his uncles. We're one big family. We all really amazing bond. The whole situation. We were separated for a little bit. He was used as a spare dog. Unfortunately, these dogs are injured or killed quite often. Cairo was a great worker. He could stick around. Still had some working years left, so he he stuck around the family and he was able to still work. It was good because I was still working as well. I wouldn't have been able to take care of him at the time. I went back to, I had to kind of get that separation between me and Cairo, just since other people would be handling him. I knew there was great other MAs that were taking care of him. He's still in the family and I got to go see him all the time, but I still had to somewhat distance myself a little bit. Just can't have him building that bond the same. I guess he needs to listen to somebody else, but I was his dad and everybody else, they were his uncles and everybody else should be able to handle him. And Cairo did have that kind of personality where anybody could probably pick him up and take the leash. If I were to get injured, somebody could take the leash and let Cairo go do his job. And he was one of those dogs that would do it really well. A little bit of guidance. And we were separated for a while there. He was in good hands. And I went back to doing my job to the best of my ability. I had my issues. It kind of covers a little bit in the book. Went through my process while Cairo was a spare dog, and I got back with my team, and I got injured by a hand grenade in 2012, and started. I think that was kind of the tipping point of a lot of other things. I had some issues in the past. My hair fell out a few times from alopecia. I wasn't feeling the same. I had some issues, some drinking issues, self-medicating. And after the grenade injury, my the migraine started. I had another TBI. I think all the accumulated blasts over the years along with that one just kind of added up, along with the loss maybe of some friends and self-medicating with alcohol just kind of put me in not a good spot. My teammates saw that and they reached out and did everything they could for me. It was, I couldn't feel better. The memory loss was bad. The migraines were really bad. I think it's a lot to do with stress. And it's kind of my passion these days of telling my story, and not only telling Cairo's story, but my story, and helping other veterans that might be going through the same thing as well. I heard some of these modalities that help me improve these days. Didn't really click when I heard them at the time from teammates that I loved, that I really respected, literally loved, and they told me about intermittent fasting kind of was one of them. They just called it something different. Didn't listen to them. Went right over my head, and then I hear it years later, and I lost 70 pounds by trying it out. So if I'm telling my story and some of these modalities that I've used to try to help myself, and with not just TBI, but some other issues, my faith and quit drinking, it's working on TBI and other physical ailments, just all kind of adds up, trying to improve my own health. But Cairo was one of those modalities. I would say when I was transitioning out of the Navy, I was probably at my worst, getting there at least, and going through all that process of getting out of the Navy and losing what I was used to. And it was pretty difficult. And I had a great girlfriend at the time, Natalie. She was amazing there for me. My teammates were there for me. They did everything they possibly could, put me through multiple treatments. Some worked, some didn't. Cairo was definitely great to have around. It was as I was going through my transition, and once we decided that we couldn't fix what was wrong, it was decided that I would retire, and I would medically retire. As I was going through my transition, Cairo was coming to the end of his life as well, and these were working dogs. I had to put in the proper paperwork in order to see if I was the proper home to be able to take care of them. Mike Ritland has a foundation, the Warrior Dog Foundation, that takes some of these dogs and gives them a home that aren't able to find homes because they're too high energy. And if your home has kids, they might not be a fit. The command had to evaluate my home and my personal being, and some other people wanted Cairo as well, but it was luck. I guess it wasn't lucky I was in a bad place, but I was able, since I was being retired, I was able to be home and be there for Cairo and take care of him. So eventually I was told I was able to take him home, and it was really good for my well-being. Cancer is a terrible thing, so it was good to be there for him towards the end of his days. He helped me get through some tough times as well.
Will, the kind of not quitting that you talked about for your attitudes towards training is also obviously something that continues with you to this day. And I do want to thank you for sharing your thoughts and your experiences because, you know, there are physical injuries and there are other kinds of injuries that aren't as visible, but also take a toll. And your willingness to speak about them and write about them as well as you do in the book, I think will be helpful to other people. But it's also just a tribute to you and what you're willing to share and what you've been through to get to this point. And I know Cairo did come home with you eventually, and it seemed from your telling of the story how meaningful it was to you that you were able to be with him for his last year. He did get cancer, and ultimately it proved inoperable. But thank you for just sharing this remarkable story, because it's still, your life is still ongoing. There's much for you in the future, and these are all things we're going to look forward to hearing about from you. What I do want to ask you about, we haven't really talked about Operation Neptune Spear yet, because at that point you're no longer going to be a dog handler. You're rotating back into regular operator and assaulter training, and then you're off in a skydiving training, and you get a call just to come back out of the blue. So pick up the story for us. This is March, I think, of 2011. How did it happen that you became part of this mission along with Cairo?
So I was just returned home from a deployment, and I was at another school with one of my best friends. His name was Nick Check. Yeah. We were at a school in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, and it might not have been the funnest school, but I was there with one of my best friends. I was pretty excited to get it going and spend some quality time with him and learn something new. And we were going to make it fun. And it was a pretty long school. I think it was a month, but all of a sudden, I think a few days in, they got a call from a boss saying, "Hey, you have a plane ticket home tonight, and you need to check out and hop on it and grab Cairo, and tomorrow be from the meeting in the team room." And okay, like, no big deal. We were pretty busy, a lot of different things going on. I don't ask too many questions. I respected my boss, my team leader at the time. He's a great guy. Whatever he needed, I was in.
And then,
hey man, we're got to go home. And he's like, "No, it's not. I haven't heard anything. So it's just you." I'm like, "Huh, that's really weird," because just Nick really was like, he was a great guy. He was a better operator than I was. He was just really amazing guy. Just weird to me that it was like, why are they calling me back? But I was okay. Probably because of Cairo. So I went, got Cairo, picked him up, and like I said, I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't care. I was still pretty young, in my 20s. And was excited to be there around a great group of guys. Didn't care what the job was, just happy to be there and being able to contribute. And picked up Cairo, showed up, and eventually we were told what we were doing, and it was just hit me hard that always the job is it's a very intense, real job, but obviously the stakes when you were a little bit higher, that they were going to be a little bit higher. Who we were going after was a little different. So yeah.
what was your reaction, and what was the team's reaction when you were told that the mission was first targeting Osama bin Laden, but second, that the mission was inside of Pakistan, well inside of Pakistan? You had, an hour's flying time inside the sovereign territory of an ostensibly allied nation, but one that didn't know you were coming in. And by coming in, technically you're committing an act of war. I mean, what was the feeling in the group about the mission itself and the risks of taking that mission forward?
Everybody was there to do a serious job. And we knew what the risks were, and anybody could leave at any time. We just wanted to accomplish the mission. The people that put together the intelligence, we had faith. We obviously saw that it was clear they spent a lot of their lives putting it together. It was just amazing. It was always a serious job. Just everybody made sure that their affairs were in order. We knew that we there was a good chance that we might not be making it back. It was a very serious mission that we didn't want to mess it up. There was a lot on the line, and as long as we accomplished the mission, then nobody even thought about stepping down. We just made sure that a lot of guys wrote letters to their families and made sure everything was in order. Like I said, anybody could have stepped down at any time, but nobody did. We accomplished the mission successfully. The amount of work that was put in was amazing. Just we could see it, the confidence that was there just from what we saw. And the guys, nobody stepped down and never would have thought about it. And we were there to do a job, and it was an honor to be able to do that job. So it was great. Even everybody that had a part to do with that just did an amazing job. Just think about how bad it could have turned out. The helicopter going down, it could have turned into a very catastrophic situation. Into just even helicopter pilots doing an amazing job of landing that helicopter. And the guys almost nearly dying, not skipping a beat, and just crushing it, accomplishing the mission without skipping, and just doing an amazing job. It was really an honor to be a part of something like that, to be part of a team like that.
So you are, and I think you've said this in the book, and I know when we talked about it, you've been to the museum a couple of times. You said that you were along for the ride with Cairo, that they wanted Cairo as part of the mission. You were his handler, and they brought you in because they took much more senior guys for the rest of the team. And tell me what Cairo and your part of the assignment was. What were you there to do in the middle of this raid? Because I think it's important to mention that there were a limited number of seats on the helicopters. There was a limited number of space and weight that could be carried. And the choice was to spend some of that on you and Cairo. So what was your mission as part of this assignment?
I would say that's very correct. The only reason I was there was because I was Cairo's handler. I was easily replaced. I was easily replaceable member of the team. I was just the group of guys, caliber. I was just trying to keep up with them. It really was. Say it all the time. I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. I'm just trying to get the point across. Just trying to keep up with them. The only reason I was there was because of Cairo. There was some very, very intelligent people there that it was an honor to be around. I learned a lot from them. I was there to, like I said, babysit Cairo, and Cairo was not so replaceable. Like I said, they go through their own selection process, and there's not as many of these dogs as there are us. And Cairo was a really great working dog. His job that night was to do sweeps of the perimeter, looking for any explosive or man odor, just any IEDs or escape tunnels anywhere. Just to see if there's anything off, anything that looked different. Once we felt the perimeter was secure, we made our way to the inside, where I was just trying to utilize Cairo the same, looking for any suicide vests, IEDs, hidden rooms, just anywhere somebody might be hiding. As I was doing sweeps, the call was made. It's a moment I'll never forget. The job wasn't over there, though. Definitely never a moment I'll never forget. But all the guys continued to work immediately. I guess it really didn't hit me until we exfilled, got back to the hangar, because we didn't know if we'd make it back through the flight. And once I remember landing and looking around and just realizing that we accomplished the mission, and nobody was injured, really. Nobody was killed or injured. Everybody was just okay, and it was a moment I'll never forget. And I got to do it with Cairo as well. I'll never forget it.
Okay. You get back and you meet the president, you meet the vice president, secretary of defense. As you're training for this mission, as you're flying out and then flying back, which was more risky than flying out, because by the time you're flying back home, people in Pakistan know you've been there. What does it feel like to be trying to make history on your way out and then coming back knowing you have made history? Are you aware of this, or is this just something that the kind of mission where you have to stay so focused that none of these thoughts are in your head while you're involved.
So on the way back, it was just, we knew we'd accomplished the mission. We just hoped that we'd make it home safe to get back to our families. And just try not to think about it too much, though. We had like I said, everybody was there as one big team. We were all there together, trying to just act as normal as possible. I remember the ride home, trying to stay, not going to sleep. A lot of guys try to sleep or read. You had these rituals that we tried to get into to stay calm and focused. And one of those rituals might be sleeping. I had Cairo in between my legs and just trying to kill my time and get back, and without worrying too much about what might happen. But we accomplished the mission and we knew that it was done. So no matter what did happen, we knew that it was done. And that was a great feeling for sure. There was like Falco, I said, that sacrificed his life saving us. I listened to music, either I sleep or I listen to music on the ride home. So there's a song I listened to on the way in that describes in the book, and there was a song I listened to, and I used to sit with Falco on the plane all the time and listen to it. It's a Great Day to Be Alive by Travis Tritt, but I couldn't listen to it after Falco passed. And it was crazy that we accomplished the mission. It was a great night. And I was on the helicopter. That song just happened to come on. And, it was just a fitting song for that time, I guess. And I remember that happening. We got back to base, and it was just like, knew everybody was safe. Everybody was going to be okay. And that we had accomplished the mission. That was pretty surreal, too.
I know before you left, you had a conversation with your dad in which you did let him know, not what the mission was, but that you were going on a mission that was dangerous and you didn't necessarily expect to come back. That had to be a very difficult conversation.
It was like that for most deployments, but this was a little different. Definitely, we really didn't think we might make it home. All deployments were very dangerous. My mom she can't hear so well, so I can't call her. So definitely let her know, but I didn't want her to worry as well. So I always kept it, pretty vague. I didn't want my mom to worry. My dad, I'd tell him a little more, but he had no clue what was happening. He probably just told him my tone of voice that things, and just let him know that, hey, if I don't make it home, just take care of everything. I love you, Mom. It was okay.
It's again just a remarkable story. I did want to add, because we met a couple of times at the museum. I know you came the first time to the museum. We didn't know you were there, and you came because obviously your service is so directly tied to 9/11. But the first time we met, when you came to the museum very kindly to offer us the loan of Cairo's vest and other things, you brought Cairo's ashes to the museum with you. You wanted them in your backpack as you walked around the museum. And when we saw the exhibition as well, and we showed you, where Cairo's vest was being shown in the exhibition at the museum, I think we all felt it was, an extremely appropriate moment for us to have, shared with you in some way. But, Cairo is still with you, as you said before, in many, many ways. And I did want our audience to know that there are times where you have brought Cairo, his remains, with you on your travels, just because the companionship continues for you.
Yeah, definitely. Y'all did an amazing job with the whole exhibit. And it's just an honor to be able to do that. I keep saying that, but I remember my team leader telling me when I was still in, he asked me if I wanted to donate it, and I was selfishly like, no, I didn't want to at first, but I'm glad I kind of realized it's everybody, I could keep it for myself and hold on to it, or get Cairo's story out there and have everybody in the world see them. And y'all did an amazing job with the whole display. It's great. So I'm really glad I was able to do that. I actually let it go and let you guys put it up on display. So I try to take Cairo with me as much as possible. He's a big part of my life. I had his ashes. I got to bring him there. I try to bring him. He covers in the book. I try to bring him there when he had cancer and just wasn't working out. It was just too busy. It was around New Year's. I wasn't able to basically get him to the museum. I brought another dog. Her name was Hagen. She's unfortunately passed as well, but I got to bring her and see it. And then once I came back and donated his items as well, it was I get to bring his ashes because he had passed by then. So I got to Hagen with me the very first time I was ever there. And then once I got to come meet you and actually make the donation, I had his can with me, and he goes quite a few places with me. I don't maybe fly with him as much these days because going through TSA is it's get weird. It's always been great so far, but it's a hassle kind of checking him maybe every once in a while. But I drive a lot, so he definitely will get thrown in the backpack, and he'll come with me on a lot of trips.
Well, I do want to thank you again. We thanked you privately, but I want to thank you publicly for trusting us to show Cairo's vest in the exhibition, and of course for telling your story. We have just a couple of minutes. I mean, some quick questions that I want to get to. Samuel asks, this is Cairo's a Belgian Malinois. What other dog breeds are really primary in terms of these military working dog assignments that get carried out?
Shepherds, so, Dutch Shepherds. I mean, for working dogs, it's pretty much that. But you can use Dobermans. We've done Dobermans, and we use the Malinois because we're in hotter environments. The Shepherds can be heavier, up to like 120 pounds, over 100 pounds. And Malinois, 60, 70 pounds. Shorter hair in the hotter environments, and they're both smart, great working animals. Just there's a lot of great working dogs. Huskies are great working animals. The Labs are great hunting dogs, and how great are their sense of smell. You can teach a dog, if it has a great sense of smell, how to, if it has that great working drive, to basically teach him to detect anything. And what we use is the Malinois because they're unlimited energy. They're real smart. Their loyalty is beyond belief. I mean, anybody out there with a Malinois knows that. And, but there's other great working dogs as well. Do the same. Shepherds, Dutch Shepherds, Labs, Huskies, Dobermans, and just go through the list. And not just the working side. There's a lot of great service dogs. Police use canines that sacrifice their lives all the time as well. Service dogs, search and rescue dogs. There's amazing animals, amazing dogs. It's a big responsibility telling this story. I don't like to talk about myself. There's way better men than me. Telling Cairo stories is huge. In doing so, I want to do it right. I think we did it right. And working with Joe, I think we've done it well. We worked with the Navy and getting improved and making sure they're happy with it. I don't want to disrespect any of my guys still working. And I think we did a great job. I didn't want shot at it. And brings attention to Cairo, a piece of history. I read books before joining the military. This is a great book for anybody interested in dogs, any animal lover, anybody wanting to join the military, be a SEAL, be a handler. So it covers that. It brings attention to what these amazing dogs do. It brings attention to the foundations from all my teammates like Jimmy Hatch and Spike's Canine Fund, Mike Ritland, and John Devine. It brings attention to those foundations and what they're doing for these dogs that give so much for us, and what these dogs do for us. Not our amazing story, mine and Cairo's, but just we're one handling team and a group of amazing people. And there's so many great dog stories. It just sheds a little light on that, brings attention to it and those foundations. And then it talks a little bit about my own issues transitioning and some traumatic brain injury and some other things that I went through as well. And as I said, telling my own personal story can maybe help some other people, some other veterans. And, it's purpose in life. It's a pretty good purpose.
Well, I want to say you didn't want to tell your story particularly. You wanted to tell Cairo's story, but we learned so much about you and so much that's admirable about you in the way you tell Cairo's story. And I think who you are as a person comes through here. It comes through in the book. I do want to, I'm going to lift it up here, but you have show it on screen if you can. But I do recommend No Ordinary Dog, Will Chesney's account of his career as a Navy SEAL with Joe Laden, but also the story of this remarkable dog and the remarkable relationship that they developed in the most extraordinary circumstances that American military members can find themselves in on all of our behalf. So Will, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Be well out there. Stay safe. And I want to thank everybody for watching. On behalf of the 9/11 Memorial Museum, I'm Clifford Shannon. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.